a quick question for you. If we do finally encounter a non-human alien species, what do you imagine they are going to look like? You might be thinking something like this: a big head, big eyes, scrawny body. This is our culture's prototypical image of an alien. It's the iPhone emoji for alien. But where did this come from? We didn't always imagine visitors from outer space looking this way. In the 1888 novel Les Hippieus, a hostile troop of aliens appear as short, see-through cones or cylinders. A decade later, 1898, in War of the Worlds, H.G. Wells gave us squid-like aliens with long, skinny, deadly tentacles. Our modern-day image of aliens, the big, oversized heads, like these seen in the Twilight Zone, began to take shape in the late 50s and early 60s, thanks in part to two different, widely popularized tales of alien encounters. In 1955, 11 members of the Sutton family in southwestern Kentucky told police they'd endured an hours-long siege where they fought off multiple small green men. These drawings, done by a local radio station employee, detail how the family described their alien attackers. A few years later, a New Hampshire couple named Barney and Betty Hill claimed they'd been kidnapped by aliens and then returned to Earth. Under hypnosis, they both described and Barney drew pictures of their captors: big heads, slits for nostrils, like those seen in the 1975 movie about their story. Perhaps the two most famous Aliens Land on Earth movies of all time, Close Encounters of the Third Kind and E.T., the Extraterrestrial, both by Steven Spielberg, continued with this classic alien style. Of course, we've now seen a remarkable range of depictions of what aliens from outer space might be like. We've seen everything from the madcap to the murderous. But this old, iconic image endures. President Trump recently posted this AI-generated image of a shackled alien. But one big difference: this interstellar visitor has definitely been hitting the gym.
Here's the thing I genuinely believe, and I'm going to say it before we've even started properly. If you are a government and your headlines are bad, your economy's struggling, people can't afford their rent, the food banks are running dry, the single best thing that can happen to you is for everybody to suddenly start staring at the sky.
So you think this is a magic trick?
I think when the powerful want you to look up, it's usually because something's being taken from you down here. And right now, the most powerful country on Earth has decided this is the month we all care about aliens. So forgive me if my first instinct is not wonder.
And yet you're sitting here. You came in, you're curious.
I'm suspicious. There's a difference.
We'll see how long that lasts. Okay, so let's actually set this up. Because if you're watching this from outside the US or the UK, some of this is going to sound completely mad. Over the past few years, the American military has confirmed a whole series of sightings. These are objects often caught on military cameras, moving in ways that, on the footage, don't seem to have any obvious engine, any obvious way of flying like that.
And crucially, these aren't blokes in a field with a blurry photo. These are pilots, trained military air crew, people whose entire job is to identify what's in the sky.
Which is why it carries weight, and the language has kept shifting. It used to be UFO, unidentified flying object. Then, around 2020, it became UAP, unidentified aerial phenomena. And now, it's been stretched even further to unidentified anomalous phenomena.
Which is the most beautiful piece of obfuscation I've heard in years. Every time you'd think you've got them pinned down on what they're talking about, they change the name. Anomalous. It could mean anything. It could mean nothing.
Or it could mean they're being honest, that they don't know.
Maybe.
And here's the part that made me sit up. And this is the question I want us to sit with the whole episode. There's actual legislation now. Senator Chuck Schumer, a Democrat, very senior, co-wrote a bill with a Republican senator. So this is not some fringe thing. It's cross-party. And in this bill, they put an official legal definition of non-human intelligence.
Read it. Read the actual wording, because it's wild.
It defines it as roughly any sentient, intelligent, non-human life form, regardless of its origin, that might be responsible for these phenomena. That's in proposed law, written by sober, serious senators.
So here's the open loop, right? Either these people know something they can't tell us, or they're spending public time legally defining little green men for no reason at all. And I genuinely don't know which is more worrying.
And that's the thing most people miss. The interesting question was never, are aliens real? The interesting question is, why now? Why is this surfacing with this much official weight at this exact cultural moment?
Because everything else is on fire. And nobody trusts a word these institutions say.
See, that's where I think you go too fast. Slow down.
I'm not going too fast. I'm going to the part everyone skips.
Let me build to it properly, because there's a piece of history here that completely reframes your suspicion, and it actually supports you.
Go on then.
So one of the journalists who studies this, Garrett Graff, he makes this point that I keep coming back to. Back in the late 1950s and early 60s, there was a massive wave of UFO sightings in America. People convinced they were seeing something impossible in the sky.
And?
A huge chunk of them weren't aliens. They were the U-2, a secret American spy plane. The government knew exactly what people were seeing, and instead of correcting it, they were happy to let people think aliens, because that hid the existence of the plane.
Oh, that's gorgeous. That's the whole game in one story. The state actively fed the alien myth to cover its own technology.
It's plausible deniability as a national strategy. If everyone's debating flying saucers, nobody's asking about your classified aircraft.
And this is exactly my point, Theo. This is the bit I was racing toward. There's a moment in this whole conversation where one of the journalists frets about, and I love this phrase, ontological shock. The idea that if we found out aliens were real, society couldn't cope. The stock market would crash. People would lose their minds. Their whole worldview would shatter.
It's a real concept. People take it seriously.
And I find it insulting, genuinely. My dad worked in the shipyards in Glasgow. Then the yards declined, and he scraped by on maintenance work. I watched a man whose entire identity, his entire sense of what he was for, get declared obsolete by people in offices who'd never set foot in a yard. That's an ontological shock. Nobody wrote legislation asking if he could handle it. They just did it to him and called it progress. Working class communities have their worldview shattered every few years. The factory closes, the pension vanishes, the regeneration project prices you out of the street you grew up on. The idea that ordinary people are too fragile for a paradigm shift. That's a luxury anxiety. People in Partick have had their whole reality shattered 3 times in 40 years. Nobody called it ontological shock. They called it Tuesday.
Okay, that's a hard point. And I'm not going to pretend it isn't. But, and here's where we're going to fall out. I think you're using class to dodge something.
Go on.
You're so committed to this is all a rich man's distraction that you won't entertain, even for a second, that there might be something genuinely out there that we can't measure. And I want to push on why you won't.
Because every time someone powerful says, "Trust me, there's a secret too big to show you," they're picking my pocket. That's not paranoia. That's a pattern.
But notice what you just did. You said the only knowledge that counts is the knowledge you can see and hold, the blurry photo, the hard evidence.
Because that's what proof is.
That's what proof is in your culture. And I say that as someone who spent 3 years working for NGOs in Kenya, watching exactly that mindset do real damage.
How do you mean?
I watched what I'd call the poverty industrial complex up close. Big organizations that needed African suffering to stay visible enough to fundraise, but complicated enough that they'd always be needed to solve it. And they'd routinely dismiss the knowledge of local people, farmers, elders, people who understood their own land for generations because it didn't come in a peer-reviewed report. That's a kind of chauvinism. The arrogant assumption that your way of knowing is the only valid one.
Okay, hold on.
And I see the exact same reflex in this UFO conversation. The only credible witness is a fighter pilot, someone inside the military hierarchy. Anyone outside it is a crank.
Right? But, okay, that part I'll actually give you. And here's why. I spent a summer working on a fishing boat out of my leg. Brutal work. And the thing that stayed with me, those fishermen knew more about that sea than any of my marine biology professors. Real, deep, generations deep ecological knowledge. And it counted for nothing. When bureaucrats in Brussels set the fishing quotas, their knowledge wasn't the right kind of knowledge, so it was inadmissible.
Yes, that's my whole point.
But Theo, that cuts the other way too. The fishermen were right, because they had direct experience of the actual sea. They weren't speculating about something nobody can show you. You're using my fishermen to defend whistleblowers who say, I was told about a crashed craft. I'm not allowed to show you. That's not local knowledge. That's a rumour with a security clearance.
That's okay. That's a fair hit.
And here's where you lose me. Because you do this thing, you turn everything into a colonial metaphor. If a bloke in Paisley sees something weird in the sky and says, I'd like a photo before I rearrange my entire understanding of the universe, that's not chauvinism. That's him asking for basic proof. You can't frame every single demand for evidence as a power play.
And you do the opposite thing. If something doesn't put an extra tin of beans on the shelf at the Partick food bank, you act like it doesn't count as real. Not everything has to be a policy paper, Chloe. Sometimes people are just allowed to wonder.
Okay. All right. That one landed.
Can I tell you a story? Because I think this is actually the heart of it.
When do you ever not tell me a story?
My grandmother in Lagos. She used to settle land disputes, serious ones, neighbors who'd hated each other for years. And she never did it with documents, no deeds, no proof. She'd tell a parable. And somehow, by the end, both men understood something true that no piece of paper could have shown them. Now,
That's beautiful. And I want to know who owned the river.
see? This is why I can't win with you.
No, I mean it. That's the difference between us in one sentence. You hear a story about deeper truth. I hear it and go, lovely. Now show me the property line. And I don't think either of us is wrong.
No, we're not. And I think we've just walked ourselves into the actual answer, haven't we?
Go on.
We're arguing about two sides of the same coin. You're right that the state will weaponize any public hunger, even a hunger for cosmic truth, to consolidate power and hide its own technology. You proved that with the spy planes.
And you're right. And this is the bit I genuinely didn't want to concede. That the public's hunger for this isn't stupid. It isn't gullibility.
It's disenchantment. People look at the politicians and the media, their bosses, the whole official story of the world, and none of it feels real, or honest, or like it's for them anymore. So, of course, they look up.
And that's the thing that actually frightens me. Not the aliens. The fact that we've reached a point where people find it more plausible that a sentient species crossed the universe to visit Earth than that our own institutions could fix a single problem in front of them.
That's the real story, isn't it?
That's the whole story. We'd rather wait for a spaceship than fix the housing system. We crave the dramatic reset because we've given up on the boring, grinding, collective work of repair.
And it's everywhere, that craving. It's the doomsday preppers, the people praying for the tech singularity, the ones waiting for a political messiah to burn it all down. It's all the same impulse. Something is coming to wipe the board clean so I don't have to do the slow work.
Did you see Trump posted an AI image of an alien, shackled, in chains?
And here's the detail that tells you everything. The alien had clearly been to the gym.
It was jacked. We finally meet a being from across the cosmos. And the first thing the most powerful man on Earth imagines is putting it in chains and giving it abs.
And that's the alien image right there. Every era invents the alien it's afraid of. The Victorians imagined squid-like invaders during the height of empire. Colonizers suddenly terrified of being colonized. The Cold War gave us the cold, emotionless, big-headed grey. And us, we imagined something to capture, to dominate, to put in chains.
It's a mirror. The whole thing's a mirror. We're not describing them. We're confessing about ourselves.
When that teacher in Manchester found out I was from Lagos, she said, "Oh, that's in Africa, isn't it?" Like she'd solved a puzzle. I was 12, and I already understood. The moment we name the unknown, we're really just sorting it into a box we already had. We've been doing it to each other forever. The alien is just the newest box.
So where does that leave the actual disclosure? Trump's website? The files? All of it?
Honestly, somewhere in the middle. I think Trump's interest is mostly a way to distract from worse headlines. Even the journalists who studied it say that. But more files coming out is still better than fewer. I just don't think there's a smoking gun in there.
And I think, and I'll commit to this, there is genuinely something in those skies we don't understand. I'm willing to believe the world is just weirder than we think. What I will not believe is that the same government that can't keep the trains running has successfully hidden a 70-year interstellar secret without one solid photo leaking.
That's the most convincing argument against the cover-up I've ever heard. Pure incompetence.
It's the great human constant. Never attribute to conspiracy what you can explain with a government that simply cannot organize itself.
People are craving a paradigm shift because the current one is rotting from the inside.
Fair. But if we sit here waiting for aliens to deliver that shift, instead of building it ourselves, we are going to be waiting a very, very long time.
So, before we close, one word for anyone learning English through this, because it's all over the news right now. If you keep hearing the word disenchantment, this story is exactly why. It's that hollow, flattened feeling you get when the institutions you were told to trust stop feeling real or honest. And right now, across the West, it is absolutely everywhere.
And it's the reason everyone's suddenly looking up. Not because they believe in something out there, because they've stopped believing in anything down here.
Look up, and you don't have to look at the ground.
Which is precisely where I came in. The government would love you staring at the sky, so maybe, just for a minute, keep your eyes on the ground.
If this gave you a new way to look at an old mystery, send it to the one person you know who still thinks it's about aliens. And drop us a comment telling us which one you really are. The one asking who owns the river, or the one telling the story.